I was born in Niles Street, barely 100 metres from the main Unicorn Road dockyard gates. And one of the first views I got was the Portsmouth Guildhall. And of course in those days it had that lovely spire and so on. There was nothing else to touch the wonderful feeling that you got from looking at that building. It was a one-off. Just before the outbreak of war, my parents moved to Ridge Street, so a lot nearer to the Guildhall. But I could read the time by looking out of my bedroom window. It was an incredible sight.
The Second World War was very, very frightening. For the simple reason you never knew when there was going to be an air raid, and as soon as there was one, you knew that you'd have to take cover, especially living in this area.
I don't think people can imagine what it's like to go night after night with those terrible bombings. Certainly the 10th of January 1941 will be a date that will always be in my memory. It was one of the worst bombings that Portsmouth suffered in the entire war. And of course, I could see from my bedroom my beloved Guildhall actually burning with the smoke and the flames pouring out of the top. It was so terribly frightening, and I just couldn't believe what I was looking at. And then the following morning, so I was able to go down to the Guildhall Square and look up right to the very top of the Guildhall, because it was all hollow, it had all burnt.
I'd been on holiday staying with my aunt and uncle in Penzance. I arrived at Portsmouth railway station at 12:45 in the morning. The ticket collector said there was no transport back to Fareham. At the same time, a young lady also joined me for company, and she was unable to get home either. Portsmouth train station was full of inebriated soldiers and sailors who were really and truthfully not very well, no. And I was absolutely petrified. The young policeman on duty said he would take both the girl and I over to the police station, which was opposite in the Guildhall in the basement. So the wardress came and she said, "The only thing I can do with you two is put you in a cell for the night." And she said, "You will be locked in because I'm on duty." Actually, it was a relief and a refuge for the night. And to know that even though we were sleeping in a cell, we were safe.
The loss of the Guildhall was a tragedy. Portsmouthians felt it deeply, and it just was decaying, and we wonder what would happen in the future. I was lucky to be able to go to the School of Architecture, which was part of the Southern College of Art in 1953, and for the 5 years I was in the School of Architecture full-time, I was within spitting distance of this building. The decision had been made to reconstruct it, which is good, and so every Wednesday afternoon we came across to climb up into the Guildhall on the outside and inspect the materials and the way it was being rebuilt. It was a remarkable time because, fortunately, they decided to go to the right stone quarry down in Portland Stone, and going around the actual stone quarries and also seeing the exploding stones being put into trucks. But more interesting still was to go to the shed and seeing the actual construction of the actual parts of this, the building, which were all labelled and numbered up. A most remarkable experience that was. The fascinating thing about the interior of the building after the war, when it was reconstructed, was the fact there was an Odinesque type interior, 1930s in style, and The actual glass screens and mirrors are of the highest quality, actually, and the money that was found for that was really worthwhile. And it was very special with the lovely carpets and the panels and the mirrors inside, all made a very special interior. The decision to reconstruct within the core of the old building was sensible, making the main area of the room being the theatre itself, the auditorium.
For the Queen to come down and open it as she did, and with all the pomp and ceremony, which Portsmouth, let's face it, they are very good at doing that sort of thing.
Portsmouth's Guildhall is majestically restored after its wartime damage. County, city and garrison dignitaries received the Queen and the Duke when Her Majesty arrived to open the new building, which has been built at the cost of £1.5 million. The commander for garrison offered the keys of the fortress to the sovereign, who touched and returned them. The old Guildhall is handsomely replaced by the new.
I congratulate all who took part in its planning and in its construction. My husband and I know how much it means to you, and we wish success to you and the citizens of Portsmouth in all their future endeavours. My Lord Mayor, it is with very real pleasure that I declare this Guildhall open.
It was lovely that the Queen took the time to come down, officially open it. There were thousands and thousands of people here, and it was a lovely, lovely day.
I came to work in the Lord Mayor's office in the Guildhall in 1974. I was a shorthand typist, but I didn't do that all the time. I had lots of duties that I learned as time went on. Sometimes I actually wrote the Lord Mayor's speech. I'd normally type them anyway. They would be dictated to me, and then I'd type them on little cards for the Lord Mayor. But I do remember sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, the Lord Mayor has got to have a speech. I think I'd better write it for him. And I did, but I don't think anyone ever knew that's what I did. And I didn't tell the Lord Mayor.
I first joined Portsmouth City Council when I came here as house manager, and I stayed here for 14 years. And I came from Jerry Cotter Circus. You met lots of different people, lots of different events, and it became a pleasure to come to work because you knew you were going to enjoy yourself and everything would be all right.
The Queen's Silver Jubilee took place when I was in the Lord Mayor's office, and we had to do a tremendous amount of work for this, lots of preparation, because the Lord Mayor was involved, all the civic dignitaries were involved. Because I'd worked in the Lord Mayor's office helping to prepare for this visit, then I got to be presented to the Queen, and we had to line up. The Queen came by and I was able to look into her eye because she's not very tall, and I touched her hand and curtsied, and she moved on. I do remember that later in the day I was with some friends and said to them, this is the hand that touched the Queen, so people touch my hand that had touched the Queen.
Well, the Royal Yacht Dinners were held annually, and it would always be attended by one of the royal family, and it was a dinner for the crew of the vessel. Over the years I met the Queen, the Duke of Edinburgh, virtually all the members of the royal family, but they would come and they would be taken up to the Lord Mayor's office for coffee and to greet them into the city. The
Lord Mayor's mayor-making ceremony took place in May every year, and whatever happened around that was sort of peripheral because mayor-making was the thing.
The ceremony would take place on the stage, and the mayor that was retiring would make his speech, and the mayor that was being elected would then make his presence felt and introduce himself to the public. They would then leave the stage, go down to the ante-room, where they would change robes. I was always the first person to greet the Lord Mayor as the Lord Mayor. I would shake his hand and say, congratulations, Lord Mayor, have a good years in office.
I never wanted to be a councillor. It was a fluke I ever was. But I thoroughly enjoyed it because I became a cabinet member for community safety. Having done a criminology degree here in Portsmouth, I thought that was very useful. On the whole, I didn't like the chamber until I became Lord Mayor. My memories of the mayor-making, that particular day, I was very nervous, I was quite frightened. I didn't quite know what was going to happen. But then when I got up on stage, with that robe on that trailed on the ground because I'm quite short and everybody else has always been tall. I had to give my speech, which I started with by taking the hat off because the hat was huge. And unfortunately I said something like, "This hat has been worn by men only because it's enormous." And everybody thought that was funny, but I think it broke the ice. The ceremony was wonderful. That particular year was the first year of the Navy presenting a sword to the Lord Mayor. It was lovely. We had the Royal Marines actually playing. I realise now it was the most amazing day. There are obviously numerous events that are very special to me. I suppose the most important was when the Queen visited Portsmouth when they were due to decommission the Ark Royal, and she met everybody. She shook everybody's hand. It was amazing. The actual decommissioning of the Ark Royal was a ceremony here on the square. And we had the Royal Marine Band, we had all the sailors, and I was given the decommissioning flag from the Ark Royal, which is here in the Guildhall. I think people are proud of the Guildhall more for its outside space. The steps outside, the surrounding area, the fact that it's closed in. All our ceremonies are here, the Remembrance Day is here, and you cannot move for people when there is a ceremony out in the square.
The Remembrance Day celebration was something which we all in Portsmouth felt part of, but the pulsation in the Guildhall Square was unbelievable. Amazing, people walking backwards and forwards across the square to come to the music. The shiver that went down our spine when the Royal Marines came down from the Theatre Royal area. It was unbelievable, actually.
There were various local choirs. The Milton Glee Club was one, and they used to ask the Royal Marine Band if they'd come and play at their concert, Christmas concert mainly, which obviously they did. But we'd also have perhaps 2 or 3 concerts during the year just with the Marine Band on their own, and they'd come in. And on any of those occasions, the security chaps would turn up in the morning with the dogs, and they would go through the building. The band equipment would arrive with a Royal Marine advance party. Well, this particular day, the dogs come in. They were looking around for about an hour, and they came to me and they said, "John, evacuate the building." So we had to empty the complete building, get everybody out of the building, and stand at the far side of the square while they carried out this check. The bomb squad arrived, and they said, "It's all right, John, you can let them back in." And they were laughing. I said, "Well, what are you laughing at?" One of the Marines had left his sandwiches in the bottom of this case at the previous concert. Probably forgot he'd done it. They hadn't had a concert for a couple of weeks, so this sandwich was well and truly on its way by the time they got there with the dogs. Whatever it was that was in the sandwich had deteriorated to such an extent that it registered to the dog as Semtex, which is a high explosive. So basically, we emptied the Guildhall for a sandwich because the dog thought it was Semtex, but I always remember that. I think it was magic.
It goes without saying that you will be proud of being in this building. Its history is amazing.
The Guildhall, for a long time, has been an important part of the landscape. It's part of the culture of Portsmouth and its heritage, and should be recognised as such.
There are few buildings, even in the country, that compare to the Guildhall. It is still a wonderful building and serves the city extremely well. And I think the city would miss it terribly if it wasn't here.